Hi, I'm Spencer McDonald. I'm the president of Thinking Driver, and I'd like to welcome you to the Thinking Driver Instructor Training course for Class 5 and 7. It's a pleasure to have you joining us on the upcoming course. The video that you're watching is intended to help you prepare to take this course. In past, we have found that people attending this course have been less than prepared and have struggled or been unsuccessful on the course because they do not fully understand traffic rules and regulations and traffic law. As a driving instructor, your job is going to be to teach people rules, regulations, and laws about driving. If you do not understand them yourselves, you're unable to teach them, and there's no time or opportunity in the instructor training course to teach you those rules and regulations. We expect you to know the rules and regulations when you arrive. And so to help you be fully prepared and set you up for success on this course, we're doing this video along with asking you and requiring you to read the manuals that include this information before you arrive. Now, as part of this preparation process, you'll also receive in your information package, your registration package, all of the questions pretty much that you'll be asked either on the entrance examination, a midpoint examination on the course, and the final theory examination on the course. So we're going to give you all the questions that you're going to ever be asked, pretty much. There may be one or two that slip by that we haven't shown you about, but you'll find all of the answers and all the documentation regardless. We're going to give you the answers to most of the questions that you'll be asked. If you spend the time and you read the material and study it and become familiar with it, then watch this video and test yourself on the information that is contained in the questions you have, you should be fully prepared to attend this course and be successful. Learn to Drive Smart is the foundational material for a new driver. You must be very familiar with this manual. You should read it multiple times. You should be intimately familiar with it. It is your candidate or your new driver's textbook that they're going to learn from. So you should be very, very familiar with that. Tuning Up for Drivers is also an extremely important document. Both of these are available online, and you can find them online from ICBC. Also, the law as it applies to driving is super important. You do not learn law in its correct meaning from either of these manuals. You learn it from reading the law, which is Motor Vehicle Act of British Columbia. The primary part of the Motor Vehicle Act that you should be familiar with is Part 3, although there may be other elements that are going to be useful to you also. What to read will be included in your information package, and you should take that advice to heart. You should also be aware of and familiar with Division 27 of the Motor Vehicle Act regulations. What is Division 27? Division 27 pertains specifically to the rules and regulations that apply to driving schools and driving instructors in the province of British Columbia. So obviously, this is something that you need to be fully aware of. Now, some advice to you. If you have not read this material yet, please stop this video and go and read the material, because you'll get much more out of this video if you've already read the books. If you try to learn the material by just watching this video, you're going to be struggling. Read the books first, please. I can't make you do it, but I can tell you that's the best way to do this. Okay, how to watch this video. The way we recommend that you watch this video is to, after having read the books, listen to myself or one of my colleagues who will be participating in this video. Read the question. We're going to pause briefly. And then that's going to give you time to think about what is the answer. You should be thinking, boy, I read that someplace. Where did I read it? And if you can tell yourself, I think I know the answer, either jot it down on a pad of paper or just remember it in your head, then we will give you the answer. And you'll know whether or not you've actually done the studying. And if you got it wrong, now you'll have the correct answer. And you could write that down for yourself too. And then you'll know. If you're confused or you want to go into one of the books or the manuals to find the answer, we're going to tell you the page. I suggest that you go do that, push pause on your playback, and go and find it in the manual. After you have and you satisfied yourself and read the applicable material on maybe a page or two on either side, then you can move on with the next part of the video. Okay, I'd love to ask you now, do you have any questions? But unfortunately, I can't ask you that. So I have the questions, and we're going to jump in and begin that right now. Okay, let's get going. So our first question has to do with what a yellow curb means. So if you see a yellow curb painted along the curb line along the sidewalk of road, what does that mean? Should you park there? Is it restricted? Does it have to do something else with who's allowed to park there? You'll find the correct answer to this question in Motor Vehicle Act Regulations, Division 18.01, or Learn to Drive Smart on page 58. A yellow painted curb means no parking. Now, second question, how far away from a stop sign, traffic control signal, or crosswalk must you park? It's a minimum distance, and the minimum distance is 10 meters. You cannot park closer to any of those areas than 10 meters. You're going to find that in Motor Vehicle Act, Section 189. It's also listed in Learn to Drive Smart on page 58. On a freeway, when approached by an emergency vehicle with flashing lights and siren, what should you do? Do you pull to the right? Do you pull to the left? Do you pull to the closest? The law says in Motor Vehicle Act 177, Learn to Drive Smart, page 92, that you should pull over to the closest edge of the roadway and stop. Now, if there's a police officer or an emergency vehicle working along the side of the road in a speed zone of less than 80 kilometers, when you're passing that stopped emergency vehicle or service vehicle with flashing lights, you must slow to a speed of most 40 kilometers an hour if you're in a zone less than 80. So slow to a maximum of 40. Now, when you're approaching at nighttime another vehicle and you have your high beams on, how close are you allowed to be? I think I missed the division on the previous one. So let's just go back first of all to the traveling at a speed of less than 80 kilometers an hour, you must slow to 40. You'll find that in the Motor Vehicle Act Regulation Division 47.02. Learn to Drive Smart, page 94. Yeah, when you're driving at night and you have your high beams on, another vehicle's approaching, at what point must you dim your high beams according to the law? You'll find that in Learn to Drive Smart, page 125. Motor Vehicle Act Division 4.06. Regulation Division 47.02. 0.06, pardon me. That is 150 meters. So when you're approaching another vehicle at night with your high beams on, you must dim them within 100 at 150 meters and not be closer than that. Find that in Learn to Drive Smart, page 125, Motor Vehicle Act Regulations, Division 4.06. Okay. Now, These next questions, and there's 3 of them, that have to do with Motor Vehicle Act Section 214. There's different subsections in this, so if you want to look at Motor Vehicle Act Section 214, you'll find the answers to all these next 3 questions. First of all, who is exempt from the prohibition on using an electronic device while driving? So, cell phones are prohibited by and large, but some people are allowed to use them. Who are they? Motor Vehicle Act Section 214.3. It's called exemptions for emergency personnel, and peace officers, ambulance drivers, and fire services personnel when performing their duties are exempt. So if you're a police officer, probably not if you're taking this instructor's course, but maybe you are, or you're an ambulance driver, or you're a firefighter, you're allowed to use a cell phone while you're driving when you're performing your duty only, so none of these people can do it off duty. So 214.3, when is a driver allowed to use an electronic device while in a vehicle? This is 214.4a, okay? You may use an electronic device if the vehicle is parked safely off the roadway or lawfully parked in a roadway without impeding traffic. So does that mean you can pull to the side of the road and safely park and use your cell phone to talk? Yes, but you must be safely parked along the side of the roadway and not be impeding traffic. That is 214.4a, use of electronic devices when parked. The next one is 214.4b, can you use an electronic device to call emergency services while driving? And the answer to that is yes, you can. You can use an electronic device while you're driving to call emergency service in the case of an emergency. Okay, so that covers that particular little section of questions. Now let's move on to another one. If you're pulled to the side of the road and you're asked to blow into a roadside screening device, what does a warn reading on an approved screening device mean? What does it indicate? A warn indication on a roadside screening device means that the driver has a blood alcohol concentration of at least 50 milligrams of alcohol in 100 milliliters of blood, 0.05. So that would be in layman's terms, you blew 0.5. That is under Motor Vehicle Act Section 215, 0.14, subsection 2, the definition of warning when it comes to a roadside screening device. How are we doing so far? There's lots more to come. What does fail mean on the approved screening device indicate? A fail means that the driver has blown greater than 80 milligrams or 0.08. So if you've got a driver who is blowing into a roadside screening device and that device lights up and says fail, it means that that driver has at least 0.08. That's Motor Vehicle Action Section 215.41 sub 2, and that's in definitions of what is the definition of fail. Okay, so in the case where a peace officer testing a driver gets a result of warn, what does the peace officer do? The peace officer must confiscate the driver's license and serve notice of driving prohibition if they believe the driver's ability to drive is affected by alcohol. Again, that's in 215, same section that we were already in. Another one in 215 is what happens if the driver refuses to provide a breath sample without a reasonable excuse. The driver in that case is subject to the same penalties as if they had blown 0.8, or the same as if they had been impaired. So that covers off some section 215s. Okay, let's jump to some different questions here. Let's go to some of these. Unless prohibited by a municipal bylaw, it's okay to make a U-turn at an uncontrolled intersection. So at an uncontrolled intersection, unless there's a bylaw, are you allowed to make a U-turn? An uncontrolled intersection would be an intersection with no stop sign, no traffic lights, no yield sign. So are you allowed to make a U-turn there? Motor Vehicle Act 168 and Learn to Drive Smart, page 52, says yes, you may do that. So that is true. You're allowed to make that turn. Okay, next question. It's okay to drive around a railway crossing barrier if no train is coming. So if you're sitting at a railway crossing, the barriers are down, the lights are flashing, and you look both ways, and there is no train anywhere, are you allowed to drive around the gates and continue on your way? Look at Motor Vehicle Act 185 or Learn to Drive Smart, page 98, and the answer is false. It's not okay to drive around a railway crossing barrier if no train is coming. If those lights are flashing, those gates are down, you need to stay put. Okay, so when can you make a left turn at a red light? You can turn left at a red light under certain circumstances. Motor Vehicle Act 129 is when you should look at for that. And Learn to Drive Smart, page 43. When can you make a left turn at a red light? You can turn left at a red light if you are turning from a one-way street onto another one-way street. And that's because you're not going to encounter any cross traffic. Also, if you're turning from a two-way street onto a one-way street, because you're not going to encounter any cross traffic. You're entering the flow of traffic. So one way to one way, two way to one way, you may turn left. Motor Vehicle Act 129, Learn to Drive Smart, page 43. Okay, so now let's jump back into asking some questions about the Motor Vehicle Act. If I were to ask you whether or not a parking lot, a shopping center parking lot is a highway, is a shopping center parking lot a highway, true or false? If you look at the definitions in the Motor Vehicle Act, in Motor Vehicle Act Part 1 definitions, it will tell you that a highway is every road, street, basically everywhere where the public is invited to drive a car or park one or take it there for repair. So anywhere where it's basically legal for you to drive your car publicly and you're invited to do that is technically it is a highway by definition. So is a shopping center parking lot a highway? The answer is yes, it is. Then is a resident, now, and so that definitions again. So then the question will be, is a residential street also a highway? Of course it is. A residential street is a highway. Now that means what is the highway? I'm going to ask my colleague to pause this just 1 second. We're back. We wanted to look up the actual definition, have it available for you. Highway, and what a highway is something that is extremely important for you to understand. So I'm going to read you this definition. You should be looking at it right now in your own Motor Vehicle Act Part 1 definitions. A highway includes every highway within the meaning of the Transportation Act. Now, if you're really geeky about this and you want to go and look up the Transportation Act, you can look that up also. But it is every road, street, lane, right-of-way designated or intended for use or used by the general public for the passage of vehicles, and every private place or passageway to which the public, for the purpose of parking or servicing of vehicles, has access or is invited. So what that means is that every road, street, highway, parking lot, alleyway, they're all considered as part of the law as a highway. Speed, whether it's divided, the part of the provinces that it's in, inside or outside the city, makes no difference. Now, we're going to also, at some point, be talking about and looking at what a roadway is. A roadway is the part of the highway that is improved for the passage of motor vehicles. So that means that the highway includes the roadway, the lanes, the shoulder, the sidewalks, right out to the property lines of the adjacent real estate. Because that was all set aside for the passage of motor vehicles, but it has not yet been improved except the roadway. Now, why is this important? It's important because any time that a vehicle is moving on a highway, that means whether it's parked on the shoulder or driving on the shoulder or driving in a parking lot or anywhere else, you're subject to the Motor Vehicle Act and the regulations. But you're not if you're not on the highway. And so they go on to say that the highway does not include an industrial road. So highway includes all of those places we talked about, but not an industrial road. So the question here is a roadway, is a shopping center parking lot part of a highway? Yes, it is. Is it a residential street part of a highway? Yes, it is. Is a roadway part of a highway? Yes, it is. Is a logging road or industrial road part of a highway? Or is it a highway? No, it's not, because it is not included. It's excluded. Does not include an industrial road. Okay, that's important for you to really understand. You should take some time and really brain that one out. Okay, let's move on to some other good questions. At an intersection where the traffic control signal is inoperative, what do you do? That means if there's a traffic signal, a light, that isn't working, what are you supposed to do? Slow down, look both ways. The law requires you, based on Motor Vehicle Act section 125.1 sub 1, if the traffic lights don't work, you must stop before entering the intersection. So you treat it as though they were working and the light is red, so you must stop. Now, if you are at an intersection and the lights are all properly working and you have a light at an intersection that is green, what are you required to do? Are you allowed to just go? Do you have to do something before you go? Look both ways. The law says by Motor Vehicle Act 127.1 that at a green light at an intersection you must yield to the pedestrians that are lawfully in the intersection and the vehicles already in the intersection. What does that mean? That means that when you're faced with a green light, you don't just get to go. You have to first let everybody else finish what they're doing in the intersection before you go. So if there's other vehicles that are still completing a turn, you have to wait for them. If there's pedestrians that have been slow getting across, just because the light goes green for you doesn't mean that they don't have the right to get to the side of the road or the end of the crosswalk. Motor Vehicle Act 127.1. It's an important one to know. When a yellow light's displayed at an intersection, you must do what? So, you'll see people all the time accelerating to get through a yellow light. Is that allowed? No, it's not. If you read Motor Vehicle Act 128.1, it will tell you that when faced with a yellow light, you have to stop. The only time that you're not required to stop at a yellow light is if you cannot make that stop safely. So if you can't stop safely, then you don't stop at yellow. You go through the yellow. That's the point of yellow. The yellow is to say stop, oops, but if you can't, go through. And then red's coming up. So that's what yellow means, stop. It's not a warning that red is coming. It's not a advice to speed up and hurry up to get through the yellow. The law says you must stop on yellow. Motor Vehicle Act 128.1, okay? So now, what must a driver do when facing a red light at an intersection? Pretty straightforward. You're going to look at Motor Vehicle Act 129.1 for this. What do you do? What does a driver do when faced by a red light? Driver is required to come to a complete stop before the crosswalk or the intersection and remain stopped until a green signal is displayed. So, you know, you'll find at intersections where drivers are required to stop, there'll be a stop line frequently, in which case you'll stop in front of the stop line. You know, if you look up here, we see a stop line. There's a crosswalk, so if there was no stop line, then you would stop before the crosswalk, which is this area here, yes? Or the intersection. So if there was no stop line and no crosswalk, you have to stop before the intersection itself. What is an intersection? The intersection is where two roads cross. You're probably going to get asked that question too, so let's talk a little bit about that. The intersection here, if you look at this whole diagram, is where these dark, not dark, but where these thick white lines are. It's the actual area that these two roadways cross each other. So the crosswalks aren't in the intersection, they're just at it. They are part of the boundary of the intersection. So this box is the intersection itself. All the rest of this is just roadways. Okay, so when you're faced by a red light, you must stop before the line, before the crosswalk, or before entering the intersection if there's no line and no crosswalk, whether it's marked or unmarked crosswalk. You gotta let everybody else finish what they're doing in that intersection, and then you're good to go, once you get green. Okay. When is a right turn allowed on a red light? Some jurisdictions don't allow it. In British Columbia, this is allowed. It's allowed only after you come to a complete stop, yield to pedestrians and other vehicles. So if you're turning right on red, unless there's a sign that says you can't, you got to stop for other vehicles and pedestrians, and then you're allowed to make your right turn if it's safe to do so. So, under what circumstances can you, let's go back and say that's Motor Vehicle Act 129.3, right? Come to a complete stop, yield to pedestrians and other vehicles, then you're allowed to turn right on red. 129.3. Motor Vehicle Act, section 125. When are you allowed to ignore a traffic control device? If there's nobody around you, nobody's going to see you? No, you must always obey all traffic control devices except if you're directed by a peace officer, like a policeman, or another authorized person. So who else would be an authorized person who would direct you to disobey a traffic control device, like drive through a red light or turn where it was prohibited? Could be a police officer. Also authorized would be a firefighter. Could be a person who is operating an ambulance and controlling an accident scene. Could be a traffic control person. All of these people are authorized to direct you to do what they want you to do, and you must do that, even if it involves disobeying a traffic control device, because they are controlling the situation and you can just follow their instructions. That is Motor Vehicle Act 125. What must you do, what must a driver do when approaching an intersection with a flashing yellow light? You must proceed with caution and yield the right of way to pedestrians in the intersection or an adjacent crosswalk. So there's a requirement here that you proceed with caution, obviously, which means to me would be slow down. The law says proceed with caution, and you must now yield to pedestrians in the adjacent crosswalk. So it's more than just slow down. What must you do when approaching a flashing green at an intersection or other location? This is Motor Vehicle Act 131.5. This previous one was 131.3. This is 131.5. What must the driver do when approaching a flashing green at an intersection or other location? Approach with a speed that allows you to stop if necessary. And yield the right of way to pedestrians lawfully in the crosswalk or intersection. So on a flashing green, you have to approach it at a speed which you're able to stop, if necessary, in order to yield to pedestrians and or vehicles that are already in the intersection. Motor Vehicle Act 131.5. Okay, we're going to do a couple more here, and then we're going to change it up. One of my co-workers work with you here. Motor Vehicle Act 141. Flip, get to that page. If a flagger or traffic control person directs you to go through a red light, you should, well, we just covered that, didn't we? They're a person of authority, and so if they direct you to go through a red light, you follow the directions and go through the red light. 141. Here we get into a couple of good questions that have to do with speed limits. These should be hammered into your brain, never to be forgotten. They're foundational, fundamental, most important stuff a driving instructor needs to know. What is the legal speed limit if you are inside a city or municipality if there's no sign to tell you how fast to go? So the maximum speed allowed within a city or municipality if there's no sign. You'll find this in Motor Vehicle Act 146.1. Is it 30, 60, 80, 50? How fast is it? Inside a city or municipality with no posted speed, the law requires you to not exceed 50 kilometers per hour. 146.1. Also on 146.1, what is the legal speed if you are outside of a city or municipality? So you're outside of town on a roadway that is, what we commonly call highway, but on a roadway outside a city or municipality. Maximum speed is 80. What about if you're in a laneway or an alleyway within a city or municipality? In a municipality where there's no sign posted to tell you how fast to go in a lane or an alleyway. It's 20 kilometers per hour. All of those are found in 146 subsection 1 Motor Vehicle Act. And let's just do these and then we'll switch it off to have Sunny do some here with you. School zones and playground zones are something that you'll need to be very, very familiar with also as a driving instructor. What times are school zones in effect? They're in effect from 8 in the morning until 5 in the afternoon. Now, what days are those in effect? Those are in effect on regular school days. Regular school days. So school is in session, those signs are in effect. Now, what about playground zones? And I'll tell you something, a lot of people confuse playground zones and school zones. They're different. School zones are identified by a school zone sign. You'll find that in your documentation there. Look at the signs. Playground signs are a category or a subcategory of warning signs, yellow and black diamond-shaped signs. So playgrounds are in effect not school days. They're in effect every day. So playgrounds are in effect regular school days. School zones rather are in effect school days, playgrounds every day. Playgrounds are in effect what time of the day? Dawn to dusk. So as soon as we hit dawn in the morning, and that time changes based upon where the sun is at and the time of year it is. But when it gets light in the morning till it gets dark in the afternoon, or starts to, those are the times that those are in effect. Be really real clear on that stuff. You need to really fully understand that. Don't be trying to tell us during your ITC training or one of your practice teaching sessions you're going to do that a school zone is the same as a playground zone. It's not. And to go one step further, sometimes you'll have a playground that is adjacent to or part of a schoolyard. If the playground is being used as if the playground is being treated as a playground, there'll be a sign, and there will also be a school zone sign if they want to, apply to both. So they're not interchangeable. Okay, now, while we're talking about schools, and then we're going to switch it up here. Schools, when you're approaching a school bus with red lights flashing, you must do what? You're approaching a school bus that has alternating red lights flashing. You must stop before reaching the bus and not proceed until the bus starts moving again, or the bus driver signals that it is safe to proceed. This means in either direction. So if you are approaching the school bus and the school bus is going in the opposite direction of you, of the driver, you must stop and wait for the lights to go off. If you're behind the school bus and the red light's going, you cannot pass the bus. You must stop and wait. If you're approaching the school bus from the other direction, you stop and wait. Now, as a driving instructor, why do you want to teach this to your students? It's because when those lights are flashing, in school busing, those are called loading lights. That means that students are either getting off the bus, that would be the afternoon, or they're getting on the bus. That means you've got children moving in and around that area, and the red lights are designed to stop all traffic, both directions. Don't move and don't go around them. You're breaking the law and you're endangering children's lives. Big deal. So you must stop and remain stopped. Okay, let me now introduce one of my collaborators.
Okay, so my name is Sonny Judge. I'm going to continue going through these questions. Where we left off is the question, when may you drive on the left side of the road? And the answer you'll find in Motor Vehicle Act, Section 150, subsection 1. Only when overtaking another vehicle, driving on a one-way road, or if road conditions require otherwise. So when you've got your student with you and there's a broken down vehicle on the side of the road and you need to overtake them, that's when you're allowed to drive on the left side. What must you do if you're traveling at less than the normal speed of traffic? Something you'll experience very often with your learner drivers. So where you'll find this answer is Motor Vehicle Act, Section 150, subsection 2. You must keep to the right-hand lane or as close as practical to the right curb, unless overtaking another vehicle, preparing for a left turn, or passing a stopped official vehicle. So especially when you first start going through lessons with your new driver, you'll notice that you're a little bit slower than the flow of traffic. And out of courtesy to them, and because of the law, we'll be moving over to the right side of the roadway. When driving in a lane with a white broken dotted line to your left, this line means we'll find the answer in Motor Vehicle Act, Section 151, subsection A. Means you may change lanes once you've confirmed it is safe to do so and will not affect the travel of another vehicle. when are you not allowed to change lanes? This is a question you'll be asked often by your students, and we need to be confident as instructors when answering this. So where we'll look to find this answer is in our Motor Vehicle Act, section 151, subsection B, where it says, you're not allowed to change lanes when doing so requires crossing a solid line, or if it would interfere with another vehicle's travel. So making sure as instructors we're aware of what's happening around us all the time, because if our lane change is going to affect someone else, it is now illegal to do so. If you're traveling on a roadway with 2 lanes in your direction at a speed of 60 kilometers an hour in a zone posted 70 kilometers an hour, you must stay to the right lane unless passing. Is this true or false? Now we'll find this answer in a few different sections of the Motor Vehicle Act. You find it in Motor Vehicle Act section 151.1, subsection 3. You also find it in subsection 2 and 157.1, subsection 3. And the answer here is false. Speed limit must be over 80 kilometers an hour for the left lane to become the passing lane and the right lane to become the travel lane or the slow lane. But if the speed limit is posted 70 kilometers an hour, then that rule does not apply. You are not obligated by the law to move over to the right. But a reminder, with your drivers, out of common courtesy and to avoid other traffic becoming irritated, moving over to the right lane will allow them to go by you, and it's a lot safer than them passing you on the right. So if you are traveling on a roadway with 2 lanes in your direction at a speed of 85 kilometers an hour in a zone posted at 80, you must stay to the right unless passing. You'll find this in the same sections of the Motor Vehicle Act, 151.1, subsection 2 and 3. This is where the answer is true. So if you're on a roadway posted at 80 kilometers an hour or more, that's when we legally have to move over to the right. So let's say we're driving down the road and we're being passed by another vehicle. What must we do? Motor Vehicle Act, section 157, subsection 2 states that we must move to the right and not increase our speed until the passing car is in front of us. Some learners have the feeling of not keeping up with traffic, and when they're being passed, they want to increase their speed, so paying attention as instructors, knowing that by law, we have to let them complete the pass without speeding up and getting in their way. Keeps everyone safe on the road. What's the minimum safe passing distance a driver must maintain when overtaking a pedestrian or cyclist?
Pen it, check them off and be done.
So if you look in Motor Vehicle Act, section 157.1, subsection 1, part B, the minimum safe passing distance when overtaking a pedestrian or cyclist is 1 meter. And this law has actually changed to be dependent on speed. And so now, if the speed limit is below 50 kilometers an hour, it stays at that minimum 1 meter. You can always leave more if it's safe to do so. But if the speed limit is posted at 50 kilometers an hour or greater, then a minimum of 1.5 meters is required. Remember, these are minimums. More space is always safer, and only pass if it's safe to do so. You may cross a solid line to pass a pedestrian or cyclist if it can be done safely. Now this might be something your students have seen their parents do or other drivers do in their life, and this can potentially be, most likely be, a question you'll face as an instructor. So you want to be confident. Are you allowed to pass a solid line when you're passing a cyclist or a pedestrian? The answer you'll find in Motor Vehicle Act, section 157.1, subsection 3. The answer is true. You are allowed to pass that solid line if it's safe to do so. So now let's talk about how closely you can follow another vehicle. Where in the law do you find the rule of how close you can follow someone else on the road? Hopefully you found this answer in Motor Vehicle Act, section 162, subsection 1. The answer is at a distance that is reasonable and prudent, considering speed, traffic, and road conditions. So there's a lot of stuff that's up in the air of what you feel is safe to do so according to the law. We know more distance is always safer, and the minimum distance you want to leave in a defensive driving world is 3 seconds in ideal conditions, but the law says whatever is reasonable and prudent considering speed, traffic, and road conditions. We talked about U-turns a little bit earlier. Here's another one for you. You are permitted to make a U-turn at a stop sign if you are outside of a business district. So outside of a business district, in a neighborhood, you come up to a stop sign, are you allowed to make a U-turn there? Answer is yes, true. You are allowed to, according to section 168 of the Motor Vehicle Act, subsection B. Now let's say you're in the business district. Are you permitted to make a U-turn in a business district at an intersection that is not controlled by a signal? In the same section of the Motor Vehicle Act, 168, subsection B, you'll find that yes, you are permitted to make a U-turn at an intersection that is not controlled by a traffic signal. So there's no lights, you're allowed to do it. Here's a question for you. What is a stop sign? In Motor Vehicle Act, section 1 of definitions, we find that a stop sign is a traffic control device. Now, where this can get confusing for our students is differentiating between traffic signals and traffic control devices. So here's a question. All traffic control signals are also traffic control devices. In the same section of the Motor Vehicle Act, section 1 of definitions, you'll find that is true. All traffic control signals fall under the definition of traffic control devices. But does it go both ways? Are all traffic control devices also traffic control signals? And if we look into the definitions, this is false. All traffic control devices are not also traffic control signals. There's a difference there. And so as you go through the Motor Vehicle Act and you start to read different laws, it's important for us to differentiate where are some allowed and where are some not allowed. And another way of looking at this question a traffic control device is the same as a traffic control signal? Same question, different wording, just like your learners will experience in their ICBC knowledge test. But the answer is false. They're not the same. And you'll find this in the same place, Motor Vehicle Act, Section 1, definitions. You must stop before the sidewalk and yield the right of way to pedestrians when emerging from an alley, driveway, or private road in a business or a residential district. So if you're a student leaving the ICBC parking lot to start their road test, do they have to stop before the sidewalk and yield the right of way to pedestrians before merging onto the roadway? Now, where you hopefully read this was in Motor Vehicle Act, Section 176, subsection 1, where the answer is true. You must stop whenever you're leaving a business, a driveway, an alleyway, or any private road. What must you do when an emergency vehicle is approaching with flashing red lights and an audible signal? Similar to the question we heard before, with a little bit of a different wording. But we find this in Motor Vehicle Act, Section 177, where it says that you must yield the right of way, move as close as possible to the nearest edge of the curb, clear the intersection, and stop. Best case scenario, as an instructor, we'll cover this well in advance when the vehicle is parked on the side of the road, so our student feels prepared as we're on the road, not surprised when an emergency vehicle shows up behind us. When parking on a roadway, how close must your right wheels be from the curb? Now we'll see this when we're pulling over to the edge of the road with our students, practicing parallel parking, even when we pick up and drop off at the beginning or end of our lessons. So where we find this answer is in our Motor Vehicle Act, Section 190, and the answer is within 30 centimeters from the curb. So whenever we finish any sort of parking maneuver, the question we ask our students is, are you close enough to the edge of the roadway? And the answer is yes, as long as you're within 30 centimeters from the curb. So if you have stopped too far forward into an intersection or on a crosswalk, on a red light, you should these are those moments where you should stay put until the light goes green. We don't want to back up to the correct position.
Show it up on there.
We don't want to activate our emergency flashers to draw attention to our positioning, or we don't get out and we don't direct traffic until the car, around our car until the light turns green. So we see this often with vehicles that may be approaching the intersection, not prepared for the light to change, or going too fast and not able to stop in time. But maybe they stop in the crosswalk. Maybe you've seen this at some point in your life in your driving careers also. So at this point, the Motor Vehicle Act, Section 193, states that it's better to stay put where you are than it would be for us to back up, or to, and how crazy it sounds, but to get out and control traffic and have them go around us. Now you might have some unhappy pedestrians, but just remember that's the law. Now in the winter time, is there a law requiring you to clear snow off your windows before driving? Or is it just smart to do that? This is the law. You must clear off your vehicle of snow before driving. And you'll find this in the Motor Vehicle Act, section 195, subsection 1, where it states that that must be done before you hit the roads. So something your student might ask you, because they maybe have seen their parents or other drivers do this in the past, if you're on a single lane roadway, are you allowed to pass on the right? And if you go to Learn to Drive Smart, on page 41, you'll see that it says if the driver ahead has signaled left and there is room in the lane, then you are allowed to pass on the right. Now let's say you arrived at an uncontrolled intersection when two vehicles arrive at the same time. So this one I can show you. So this is a really big four-way stop. And two cars arrive at the same time. Who gets to go first? And when this is the case, we always yield to the vehicle on our right. So the vehicle on the right would get to go first, followed by the next vehicle that had stopped. Where are we going to find this? We're going to find this in your Learn to Drive Smart manual, page 41. Now, driving in laneways or alleyways, I know a question students ask me all the time. Because there's no posted speed limit sign, what is the speed limit in a laneway or alleyway within these municipalities? Now, where we find this answer is either in the Motor Vehicle Act, section 146, subsection 8, or in Learn to Drive Smart, page 69. The answer is 20 kilometers an hour if you're driving in a laneway or alleyway within a municipality. Slow is safe. Now a little bit different wording, but we heard a similar question to this before. Unless signs tell you otherwise, the speed limit outside of a municipality is 80 kilometers an hour. And that's Motor Vehicle Act, section 146, subsection 1, and Learn to Drive Smart, page 69. Now you'll be able to answer this one with confidence if you've been following along so far. What must you do when exiting an alley onto a road? You stop before the sidewalk area and yield to pedestrians and traffic. Motor Vehicle Act, section 176. Learn to Drive Smart, page 48. Now this one stumps even drivers that have a lot of experience. Question is, it is okay to use your cell phone when driving to call 911 to report an emergency. True or false? If we look and Learn to Drive Smart, page 101, you see that it's true. If you're driving for an emergency or to report an emergency, you are allowed to pick up the phone and dial 911. Smoking in a vehicle is prohibited if you have a passenger under the age of what? Answer is if your passenger is under the age of 16 years old, you are not allowed to smoke in the vehicle. Where you find this is in the Motor Vehicle Act, section 231.1, and also in Learn to Drive Smart on page 11. You must not do a U-turn on or near the crest of a hill unless other vehicles can see you from a distance of at least . So when your student asks, am I allowed to do a 2-point turn, 3-point turn, or a U-turn here, the minimum distance that other traffic has to be able to see us from is 150 meters. So in the Motor Vehicle Act, section 168, and Learn to Drive Smart, page 52. Where are you going to find that? So we don't want to be doing it near the crest of the hill if there's not visibility in either direction, or before the bend in the road. We want it to be visible for traffic in either way. At a railway crossing, with flashing red lights and no barriers, so there's no arm that's coming down, there's no flashing lights, you must stop and go only if it is safe. So Motor Vehicle Act, section 185, subsection 1. You also find this in Learn to Drive Smart, page 36. Now we added some questions that have multiple correct answers to choose from, and so you have to circle all that apply. So the question is, when can you make a left turn at a red light? When turning from So if you're turning from a one-way street onto another one-way street, or a two-way street onto a one-way street, you're allowed to make a left turn at a red light. Motor Vehicle Act, section 129, and Learn to Drive Smart, page 43. Now in some cities you find the high occupancy vehicle lane on the right side of the road compared to on Highway 1 where we find it on the left. As a single occupant, when may you use a right side high occupancy vehicle or HOV lane? There's three answers for this. You're allowed to drive in this high HOV lane if you're just by yourself, if you're going to turn right at the first intersection coming up, if you've been directed to by a police officer, or if you are riding a motorcycle. And where we find this is Motor Vehicle Act, section 42.02, as well as 42.03, and Learn to Drive Smart, page 53. Okay, so let's pause for a second here. If at this point you're feeling overwhelmed, or that this is moving a little bit too quick for you, just remember, the point of this video is not to just give you all the answers and expect you to learn from this. How this will serve you best, if you haven't already read both the ICBC manuals, the Motor Vehicle Act, and the Motor Vehicle Act regulations, then pause this and go and do that first. Then go and try the quiz from what you've read. And as you go through these questions, Also pause after every time we ask a question. If you find yourself knowing the answer right away, then you can continue. If you find yourself stumped, maybe you remember seeing it somewhere but not 100% sure, then leave it paused, go and find the answer yourself, so that at least you have that skill with you when you go out to train brand new drivers. We don't expect you to have this all memorized yet, but the best instructors always know where to look and where to find information when these questions are presented. On that note, we're going to keep rolling here. So when parallel parking, how close to the curb must you park? No farther away than answer 30 centimeters or 12 inches. So within 1 foot of the curb. And we find that in the Motor Vehicle Act, section 190, Learn to Drive Smart, page 58. How far away from a fire hydrant must you park? At least Now where we find this answer is the Motor Vehicle Act, section 189, and Learn to Drive Smart, page 58. The minimum distance we have to be from a fire hydrant is 5 meters. The way that I pass this information along to my students is fire hydrant starts with the letter F, so it is 5. That's the easiest way for me to remember it and for them to remember it. When we think about stop signs, that's when the answer is 6 meters, and I use the same method. So here's a true or false question for you. It is not legal to follow or park behind a fire truck displaying lights and sirens Okay, so this is where I'm going to pause in my own editing. You don't have to pause it. It's okay.
Okay.
So I'm going to pause it there. I'm going to restart that question. Next question. It is not legal to follow or park behind a fire truck displaying lights and sirens more closely than how much distance? Seems like this is the magic number for a lot of distances that we see, but it's 150 meters. And where did I find this, and where did you find this, hopefully? It's the Motor Vehicle Act, section 198, and Learn to Drive Smart, page 94. So when you ask your student these questions, and they're not 100% sure, one of those things we want to have in our vehicle at all times is to Learn to Drive Smart, showing them the section that we expect them to have read by now, but if not, showing that we're equipped as instructors to know where the answer is. In a speed zone of 80 kilometers an hour or more, where you're passing a stopped emergency vehicle, such as police or tow truck with flashing lights, any vehicle with flashing lights on the side of the road, you must slow to what speed? So this rule applies for speeds that are posted 80 kilometers an hour or more. The new maximum when you pass emergency vehicles in these zones is 70 kilometers an hour. And where we found that is Motor Vehicle Act Regulations, Division 47.02, and Learn to Drive Smart, page 94. Now, legally speaking, when must you use your headlights? So when do you have to have your low beam lights on and illuminated? legally, we have to have them on from 30 minutes after sunset to 30 minutes before sunrise. Defensive driving, we want them on all the time so that we're visible to everyone else, and that's something I encourage you to teach your students. But also know the law, that legally we have to have them on 30 minutes after sunset to 30 minutes before sunrise. And where did we find this? Learn to Drive Smart, page 124. Let's go through a few more before I pass it on to one of our other colleagues. On a road with one lane in each direction, it is okay to pass on the right. So the question is really asking, when is it okay to pass on the right if you're on a one-lane road in each direction? Correct answer is if the vehicle ahead is signaling to turn left and there's room in the lane. Again, where we found this was Motor Vehicle Act 158 and Learn to Drive Smart, page 54. Now, if some of you scratch your head of why there's repetition in the questions we're going through, we've accumulated questions from a bunch of different sources so that you're equipped to go through any quiz, any test that we may throw your way, or any question we may throw your way. And there will be some repetition as you go through and you practice in the preparation guide that you have in front of you now. So if you think back of that diagram we just saw on the board, when arriving at an uncontrolled intersection at the same time as another vehicle, if they both stop at the same time, you must yield if the other vehicle is on your right. Does not matter if they've got their turn signals on, if they're going one way or the other. If we both stop at the same time at an uncontrolled intersection, the vehicle on our right gets to go first. And where we find that is Learn to Drive Smart, page 41. Now, if we're driving down the road, there's a two-way left turn lane in the center of the road. What does that mean? Who's allowed to use that lane? It means cars traveling in both directions can turn left from this lane. And where we find that, and you'll also find a diagram, is Learn to Drive Smart, page 51. And so if we're teaching this to our students and we don't have one readily available, or it's just around the corner, then having Learn to Drive Smart nearby so you can show a diagram is a strong visual aid that you can provide your learners to pass this information along, and so that they feel confident when it's time to actually use it. When a school bus displays flashing red lights, you, as a driver, must Motor Vehicle Act, section 149, and Learn to Drive Smart, page 91, say that you cannot pass the bus in either direction. Everyone must come to a stop. We want to keep those kids safe. Unless signs tell you otherwise, the speed limit in a municipality or on treaty land is 50 kilometers an hour, and we find that in the Motor Vehicle Act, section 146, subsection 1, and Learn to Drive Smart, page 69. Now when I'm driving my students and they ask me, I haven't seen a speed limit sign, what's the speed limit here? We can always revert back to this law that says if it's not posted, the speed limit is 50 kilometers an hour until posted otherwise. Now, we see it all the time, but are you allowed to use your cell phone when stopped at a traffic light? So the light's red, we're not moving. Are we allowed to use our cell phone? If you weren't able to find it, Learn to Drive Smart, page 101, to find that this is false. You are not allowed to use your cell phone when you're stopped at a traffic light. When can you use it? When you're pulled over and parked. And so now we're going to pause and I'm going to send you to our next instructor, Preet.
Hey guys, my name is Preet and we will continue forward with the questions. I would ask you some multiple choice questions and I would encourage you to take your Learn to Drive Smart manual from ICBC and have it ready for you. And I will give you some references to the page numbers. You can find those correct answers to the page number, and I will be giving you some time to look at the correct answers as well. So we're going to start with some questions required for class 7 students who are taking their GLP course. So GLP course is a graduate learning program. A lot of students take that course. My first question is, what document is required for class 7 road test if the applicant has completed an ICBC approved GLP course? I will give you some choices. Is it would be a medical like certificate or medical clearance form? Would it be a declaration of completion from the driving school from where they are taking that course? Would it be a logbook like their attendance sheet, like how many lessons they took? Or would it be their insurance paperwork? So I want you to take a look on the Learn to Driving Smart manual, and for the correct answer, I would like you to just turn the cover page on the other side, so it's on the back of the cover page. You would see the correct answer, and that is the declaration of completion. So you will get that kind of a certificate once the student would complete the whole GLP course. They will get a certificate, then they are going to submit that certificate to the ICBC, and then they would be able to go for their road test. My second question is how you should position your head restraint, some people call it headrest, so that we can prevent the whiplash. The first option is level with the base of the skull, like somewhere like base of the skull here, just above the neck and at the base of the skull. At least at the level of the top of the head and close to the back of the head. So means like going a little bit above the head and close to the neck. Or adjust to touch the driver's shoulder, like somewhere here, and your neck and head would be up. Or position 10 centimeters below the head, so somewhere close to the neck. What do you think? So you can find the correct answer on the same manual. If you go to the page 13 and look for the topic head restraints, the correct answer is at least at the level of top of the head and close to the back of the head. It could prevent the whiplashes. Moving ahead to the next question. What action is required when encountering a stopped vehicle with the flashing light? We have done this like topic before, but now my question is, if the speed limit is less than 80, what should be the correct speed limit to obey if we have a stopped vehicle like with the flashing lights? So I have some options for you. Slow down to 30 if the speed limit is less than 50. Slow down to 50 if the speed limit is more than 80. Slow down to 40 if the speed limit is less than 80. Or move safely to the side of the road and come to a complete stop. To find the correct answer, I would like you to take a look on page 94 and look for the topic that says stopped vehicle with flashing lights. And the correct answer is slow down to 70 if the speed limit is 80 or more than 80, and make your lane change. So don't keep on moving in the same lane, you have to also switch your lanes and move away from the emergency vehicle. A flashing green light. We all know like flashing green light is a pedestrian control light in British Columbia. My question is, if we have a flashing green light facing towards our side, what kind of controlling device would be on the side streets? The traffic on the side street, what kind of controlling device they would be facing? I will give you some options here. Would they have a railway crossing ahead sign on the side street? Or there would be it means like left turn is prohibited, so they could have a sign for left turn prohibited. Or they would have a flashing green light or red light, same like us. Or would they have a stop sign? So the correct answer is they would have a stop sign, which means even if we have a flashing green light, traffic on the other side, if they feel safe, they can still go. So be more careful when we are passing or going through a flashing green light. Next question. After failing the class 5 road test 3 times, it's your third attempt, you went for your road test and you didn't pass, how long the driver must wait for another retest? Would it be 7 days, 14 days, a month, or 2 months, or 60 days? Correct answer, I want you to go to the back of the cover page of the same manual. You will see the correct answer is 60 days. So if you go for a road test, you didn't pass at the first attempt, 15 days. Second attempt, 30 days. Third attempt, 60 days, and so on. So if you didn't pass at the third attempt, then each attempt you will have to wait for 60 days. Next question. What is the correct procedure to enter a roundabout? Should you speed up to merge, yield to the traffic already in the roundabout and enter counterclockwise, enter clockwise if turning left, or you should just give signal and move in? The correct answer is go to page 47 and look for the topic roundabouts, and the correct answer is yield to the traffic already inside the roundabout. And if you arrive at the same time, if you think like 2 vehicles are arriving at the same time, then always yield to the vehicle on the right. Now we're going to talk about speeding fine in the construction zone. I want you to go to the page number 96, look for the space margin and speed control and slow down. It would fall under the lesson that says construction zone. It's again page number 96. What would be the speeding fine in the construction zone? Correct answer is double. Learn to Driving Smart manual indicates on page number 96 that the speeding fine would be double if you're speeding up in a construction zone. Next question. When you can legally use the HOV lane with a van pool permitted tab. Sometimes you may see a van pool permitted tab under HOV lane. I will give you some options. If the vehicle has more than 6 occupants or 6 occupants in it, it must be a van and must be a rush hour, or if the vehicle has 12 or more than 12 occupants. I want you to go to the page 53, look for the topic bus lane. And the correct answer is if the vehicle has 6 or more occupants, then you're allowed to use the HOV lane. If there is a tab under it that says van pool. Next question, what you should do if your vehicle begin to hydroplane? Some options are ease off the accelerator and keep steering straight and use the brakes gradually. Second option, accelerate to regain the traction, decelerate and drive straight, never brake, or turn the wheel sharply to the left. The correct answer is decelerate and drive straight and never use the brakes. You can find this answer on page 121, strategies, preventing, handling and hydroplaning is the topic. Next question. The 2-second rule refers to, what is 2-second rule? Does it refer to like safe merging distance, safe following distance in an idle condition, time to give signal before making a left or right turn, or gap for passing a bicyclist? You can find the correct answer on page 73, topic space in front, and the correct answer is following distance in idle conditions. Next question. If your brake fails, what you should do? Should you shift to neutral and coast? Should you pump the brakes, downshift if you're driving a manual or sometimes even automatic transmission, they would have a manual selection option, so you can downshift from there and use the parking brakes. Another option is turn off the ignition, or you would flash hazard lights repeatedly. The correct answer is, if you look at the page 127, pump the brakes, downshift, and use the parking brakes. It would be even better if you use the hazard lights or you flash the lights to inform other people around you and try to find your escape route wherever you can pull aside safely. And you can find this answer on page 127. Topic is brake failure. Correct hand signal for the right turn. It's important to know the hand signals because sometimes when we are driving, we may have a bicyclist in front of us and they would be giving us some kind of a signal, so it's important to know what they are trying to communicate with us. So what is the correct hand signal for the right turn? Would it be this? I'm gonna stand up. Would it be this, or this? Now the correct answer you can find on the page number 76, and the topic is turn signal. This would be the right hand signal. This would be the left hand signal. This would be the right hand signal, and that would be the stop. You can find the correct answer, page 76 again. Moving to the next question. Using a handheld device in the GLP course, if you or your student is taking a GLP course and they are using a handheld device, what could be the consequences? They may get a warning, a fine, driving prohibition, or suspension of their license for 30 days. The correct answer, refer to page 101, cell phone and other devices, and the correct answer is driving probation. You cannot use handheld device while taking a GLP course, and if you are taking a GLP course, you got caught using a handheld device, you can get prohibited from driving. Moving to the next question. How should you handle a skid on ice? Steer opposite to the skid, brake immediately, steer in the direction of skid, accelerate to regain the control. You can find the correct answer on page 117, topic skid control, and the correct answer is steer in the direction of skid. Moving to the next question. If an oncoming driver high beams and blinds you, what you would do? Would you flash your high beams on them as well? Or would you speed up to pass them quickly so that you don't have to stare at their high beams for a longer time? Would you slow down and stop abruptly? Or would you glance at the right edge of the road and drive carefully? The correct answer can be found on page number 119, glare and shadows. And the correct answer is glance at the right edge of the road. Next question. When may you turn right on a red light? Some options. Only between 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. if there is no police, when the intersection is empty, or after yielding to a pedestrian, vehicles, and after coming to a complete stop. The correct answer, look at the page 43, steady red light. You're allowed to make your right turn, but you must yield to the pedestrians, moving vehicles, and make sure you come to a complete stop. First obey the red light, and then look for the safe gap, and then you're allowed to turn. Make sure there shouldn't be any posted sign that restricts us from making a right turn from any intersection. Next question is about blood alcohol content. Driving with blood alcohol content of 0.08% can result in a warning, criminal charges and license suspension, a small fine, mandatory driving education. To find a correct answer, take a look on page 103, fact about alcohol. And the correct answer is criminal charges and license suspension. Next question, what should be the minimum stopping distance from the railway tracks? Some options are 2 meter, 5 meter, 10, 15. I want you to take a look on page 97. Topic is trains. You would find the correct answer, which is 5 meters. where you must yield to the pedestrian, I'm gonna give you 4 different scenarios. You would only yield to the pedestrian at the marked crosswalks, or at the crosswalks and intersection and when turning, or just during the school hours, or if they wave at you. The correct answer, take a look on page 83. Topic is pedestrian. We must yield to the pedestrian at crosswalks, intersections, and when turning, left or right. We must yield to the pedestrians. Next question is related to parking. Can we park in a bike lane? The answer is no. We cannot park in the bike lane. And you can find the correct answer on page 58 on the same manual. It says parking in a bike lane can result in fine and even towing. Next question is about one of the construction zone sign. Sometimes you will see a sign that says soft shoulder on the construction. What does it mean? What action we have to do over there? So soft shoulder means like there could be some gravel or some uneven surface on the shoulder of the road. So what we should do over there? Correct answer you can find on page 35, which means shoulder is unstable and avoid driving on it. We should avoid driving on the soft shoulder of the road. Next question, high beam headlights are illegal within how much distance? Is it 50 meters from other vehicle, 150 meters from other vehicle, 200 meters from other vehicle, or 100 meters from other vehicle? And the correct answer you can find on page 124 using the headlight as the topic. And the correct answer is 150 meters from other vehicle. Now let's talk a little bit. I have some question about infant baby seats. Rear facing infant seat should never be placed. Option 1, in the back seat. Option 2, in the vehicle with the airbags. Option number 3, in the front seat with active airbags. And option number D, near the side doors. You can find the correct answer on page 16, and the correct answer is in the front seat with the active airbags, because airbags can also injure the babies, the infant babies. Next question is about the booster seat. A booster seat is required until a child is what age? 12 years old, 9 years old, or 145 centimeter tall, 6 years old, 15 kilograms in weight. Take a look on page 15 that says stage 3 booster seat, and the correct answer is 9 years old or 145 centimeters tall. One more question about signs. A blasting zone sign. What should be your action if you see a blasting zone sign? What is required for a driver to do at the blasting zone sign? Would you speed up to avoid the derbies? Would you honk twice? Would you turn off your radio and follow the instruction? Or would you make a just U-turn immediately and move away from that zone? correct answer. Take a look on page 35, construction signs, and the answer is turn off your radio and follow the instructions. Next, failing to yield to a pedestrian in a crosswalk may result in, could it be a verbal warning, fine and demerit points as well, license renewal delays, or there wouldn't be any penalty on that? For the correct answer, take a look on page 83. And the correct answer is fine and demerit points. Next question is about parking. Are we allowed to park in no stopping zone? I'll give you a few options. We may park at the night time. For deliveries, we can never park. If we are parking just under 5 minutes, then it's okay. You can find the correct answer, go to page 32, parking signs, and the correct answer is never. We are never allowed to park on a no stopping zone. Again, another question about a sign. If you see a sign with a blue background color, what does it mean? Is it a information sign? Is it a rule? Is it a construction sign? What kind of sign it could be? Take a look on page 35, information and designation signs. So this is more like an information sign. So if you look at these signs, like most common signs are like it could be for hospital, emergency room ahead, airports, any kind of like tourist attraction, they would have signs like this. In fog, what you should do? Let's say it's fog and you're driving in a fog, what you should do? Some options here. Use your high beams for better visibility. Drive close to another vehicle ahead of you. Use low beams and increase your following distance. Or turn off your headlights and put on your hazard lights. For the answer, go to page number 118. Topic is loss of visibility. And the correct answer is use low beams and increase your falling distance. My next question is again for those candidates who would be taking GLP course. What is the limit of blood alcohol content allowed for GLP candidates who are taking GLP course? Would it be 0.05%? Would it be 0.08%? 0.02%? Or it's not allowed, zero tolerance? You can find the correct answer on page 155, penalties for impaired driving. And the correct answer is zero tolerance. When we must activate our hazard lights? Some options. When we are driving in a rain, when we are stopped for an emergency, when we are exceeding our speed limit, or changing lanes. Here we are talking about hazard lights, when we are allowed to use our, when we should activate our hazard lights. And the correct answer is when you are stopped for an emergency, and you can look for this answer on the Learn to Drive Smart manual. We're going to talk a little bit about lane markings and some signs more about the lanes. A lane with diamond marking, you must have seen HOV lanes with the diamond marking. We are talking about that sign. What does it means? Does it mean it's a lane for the buses only? Does it mean that you cannot make a lane change? Or is it just a shoulder of the road? Or is it a reserve lane? Look up on page 40. Topic is reserve lane marking, and the correct answer is reserve lane. Diamond marked lane mean reserve lane. Additional sign or marking state which vehicle are allowed. So if there is additional picture of a bus, then it would turn into a bus lane. If you see a picture along with the diamond marking with a bicycle, then it could turn into a bike lane, or there could be multiple pictures depending on the road. What does a flashing yellow cross light above all the lane means? You know, the cross lights, you must have seen those lights on a highway where the lane is ending, or they tell us to merge. So what does a crossing lane, if we have crossing light above all the lane, what does it mean? That means slow down and proceed with caution. You can still move in the same lane, but you have to slow down and proceed with caution. I want you to go to the page number 36. Topic is lane control signal. And it says, if the lane control signal over all the lanes are flashing yellow, then you slow down and proceed with caution. So now we are moving forward to the next question, and that question is, what type of intersection could possibly have no left turn sign on the red light? So there would be a sign that says no left turn on a red light. So what kind of intersection would have that kind of a sign? The correct answer is, you can go to the page number 43 that says steady red light, and the correct answer is intersection with one-way street to the left side. Moving to the next question. What does a amber or yellow flashing light means on a school bus? You know about the red flashing lights on a school bus? So now this question is about what does a yellow flashing light means on a school bus? So we are talking about those emergency flashing lights, not the four-way flashers. If you go to the page number 92, topic is school buses, and the subtopic is C. Flashing yellow light means the bus is preparing to stop. In that kind of situation, it's better to slow down and stop with caution, because the bus is about to stop. They would be getting prepared to get a school guard off, and they would be putting on the stop signs, and they would be flashing the red light soon. Next question is about yielding to the bus. We know that we have to yield to the bus by law. The question is, when we are not required to yield to the bus. I have some options here. The bus is not signaling but displaying a sign to yield, and the speed limit is 50. Second option, the bus is signaling on a highway, displaying a sign to yield, speed limit is more than 60 kilometer per hour. Bus is not displaying sign to yield, and the speed limit is less than 60, and the bus is displaying a sign to yield, they are signaling, and the speed limit is 60 or less than 60. So the correct answer is, we always yield to the bus that is displaying a sign and signaling, and the speed limit should be 60 or less than 60. Only then we are required to yield at the buses. You can find the correct answer on the page number 93, and the topic is public transit buses, and the subtopic is think. Coming up to the next question. If you are in a situation where you feel threatened by other driver, what would you do? What could be the best safe strategy in this kind of situation? You would move your vehicle into an empty street where you can speed up, sound the horn, and attract the attention to yourself if someone tries to get into your car. You would drive back home and close your garage door immediately, or you would call the 911. So the correct answer you can go on the page number 111, and the correct answer is sound the horn, attract the attention to yourself if someone tries to get into your car. Never move your car into the empty road where it's less public, because it would be more dangerous. So you want to get into a place where it's more crowded. You can have like more people around you. Calling 911 is a good option, but they are gonna take some time to respond, and you want to pay attention to your driving as well. So we don't want to keep ourselves too much busy on the phone for the whole time. So once you are done with 911, make sure you go into more busy place. And if you cannot move, then it's the best thing to do is to sound your horn and attract the attention of other people towards you. What factors can increase hydroplaning? For the correct answer, would like you to go on page 121. So the low tire pressure can increase the hydroplaning. Moving to the next question. An aggressive driver is tailgating. You do not have room to the side or to the front. What you should do? Some options are speed up a little bit to create more room from the tailgater, or you would slow down your speed and let the vehicle ahead of you move ahead so that you have more room in the front, or you would just ignore the tailgater because they can distract you. You just want to focus ahead, or you would hit the brakes and teach a lesson to the tailgater. What you would do? Or we can find the correct answer and learn to drive smart. I'm messing with the page number, so you can just try to explore the learn to drive smart, and you would find the correct answer. And the correct answer is slow down your speed and let the vehicle ahead of you to move further ahead of you. Because if someone is tailgating you from behind, then we don't have option to control them. So what we do in this kind of strategy, in this kind of situation, we build a strategy in which we would have more room to the front. So at least we are more safer from the front. And in case if they would rear end, then we won't be becoming like a sandwich in between two cars. Next question is again about how we can prevent a collision. It's actually about what is the safest section for a collision. So a big size animal suddenly runs into your path, and hitting that animal is unpreventable. So what is the safest action you would do? You would honk, flash your lights, and swerve sharply to avoid hitting. Second option, accelerate to avoid the impact and manage the strike of the animal at the weakest and the lightest body part. Prepare to stop by covering your brakes, honk, and hold your steering wheel firmly at the same time. Or you would hit the brake hard while managing to strike that big animal at an angle and ease off your brakes just before hitting that animal. The correct answer is, if you look at page number 130, collision avoidance, the correct answer is hit the brakes hard while managing to strike the animal at an angle and ease off your brakes just before hitting, so that the front of the vehicle can lift up. This would avoid the animal getting into the windscreen. Next two questions are about point of no return. So before I ask you the question, I will explain you the point of no return. Point of no return is that point where we make a decision that in case if the light turns yellow, should we stop safely or should we not? Let me explain you on a diagram. Let's say we are driving towards the intersection and the light is stale green. Stale green light means it may turn yellow anytime. Now we are not sure when the light would be turning green, so we are going to make a decision while approaching the intersection that can we stop before this stop line or not? And if you made a decision somewhere here that yes, I can stop before the stop line, it means you're still not in the point of no return. But as you're moving ahead and somewhere here you made a decision that I won't be able to stop before the stop line, that means you have entered your point of no return zone, so you're no longer able to stop before the stop line safely, and this point would be your point of no return. So if you have entered your point of no return, so you shouldn't be trying to stop. Instead, you scan the intersection clearly and safely clear of the intersection going straight ahead. The point where you make the decision is called point of no return, and we are going to talk about point of no return in next two questions. So the question is, point of no return is point where we make decision whether we can stop or not if the intersection light turns yellow. While making this judgment for this decision, what we should think of? Should we think, like when we are checking the point of no return, should we think, can I clear the intersection if the light turns yellow? Or should we think, can I clear out the intersection before the light turns red? Or should I think, can I stop at the intersection line if the light turns yellow? Or option 4, is it safe to go through the intersection on a yellow light? The correct answer would be, can I stop at the intersection if the light turns yellow? Because if you're thinking about going or clearing out the intersection, you may encourage yourself to go through a yellow light. So we never want to think about going or clearing out the intersection at the yellow light. Instead, we want to think about stopping at the yellow light, even like if your speed is not like matching with that, then you may like proceed ahead because it can change the point of no return. I may edit it. Now, my next question is point of no return. It's about point of no return. What are the factors that can change your decision for point of no return? So I'm gonna give you some options. There could be multiple options that can change the point of no return. The first option I'm giving you is distance from the intersection. Like how far you're from the intersection. Could it change your point of no return? Size and weight of the vehicle behind you. Should it change your point of no return? Speed of your vehicle. Could it change the point of no return? Road surface conditions like slippery condition, or like let's say it's icy road. Could it change the point of no return? So the correct answers are size and weight of the vehicle behind you, because you may haven't entered the point of no return, but someone else who is behind you, who could be heavier than you, like a truck or trailer, who is hauling more like weight, they require more stopping distance. So they could be already in the point of no return, whereas you are still out of point of no return, which means you may able to stop safely, but they are not. So in that kind of situation, we have to change our decision of point of no return, and then it gets better to go through the yellow light, even if you can stop, because someone behind you, they may not stop. So to avoid the rear end collision, so we always want to make sure that we are checking our rear view mirror to check for kind of vehicle behind us before we make a decision about point of no return. Then the second option, which is correct, is speed of your vehicle. Speed of your vehicle can change the point of no return. Most of the time we think about the distance from the intersection, but the distance is something that we use while judging the point of no return, but it cannot change your point of no return. But the speed can change your point of no return, because if you're moving more faster, it means you need to make this decision more earlier, and your point of no return would be more further, because you require to take more time to stop before the line. And the road surface condition, obviously, if it is a slippery condition, it's an icy road, then you might have to use your brakes a little bit early, which is gonna take like longer time to stop, and so it's gonna change your point of no return. Next question is, what is overdriving the headlights? So for the correct answer, I want you to go to the page number 125, overdriving the headlights. The correct answer is, overdriving happens if you go too fast and you're not able to stop within the distance covered by your headlights. It's especially dangerous in a curve. So the correct answer you can find on page number 125. And the topic is overdriving the headlights. Next question is about the school zones. Where a school guard can be normally seen, and which sign indicates that there could be a school guard? I'll give you some options. At the beginning of the school zone, near a school zone sign. At the parents' pickup and drop off zone signs. At the school crossing near children crosswalk sign, or at the main entrance of the school gate. You can find the correct answer on page number 31, and the topic is school, playground, and crosswalk signs. And the correct answer is at the school crossing near children crosswalk sign.
Okay, next question. And so the question is, who is required to wear a seatbelt while in a moving vehicle? So we're all sitting in the car, who's required to wear a seatbelt? Where you're going to find this answer is Motor Vehicle Act, section 220, subsection 4, for seatbelt requirements. And the requirement is every occupant of a vehicle equipped with a seatbelt must wear it properly unless exempt under specific conditions, which you can find in that same section of the Motor Vehicle Act. A driver can operate a vehicle if the seatbelts have been removed or modified. And so a lot of our students who are teenagers, not a lot of them, but some of them will venture and work on customizing vehicles, and so they may pose this question to you. Am I allowed to drive a vehicle if the seatbelt's been removed or modified? Where I'll find this answer is Motor Vehicle Act section 220 subsection 3 for prohibited seatbelt modifications. And the correct answer is no. A driver must not operate a vehicle on a highway if any required seatbelt assembly has been removed, made inoperative, or modified to reduce effectiveness. Now, what circumstances is a driver not required to wear a seatbelt? And it's surprising that there are some that fall under this category. So the driver is exempt when the vehicle is moving in reverse, or if you're frequently exiting and re-entering the vehicle for work while not exceeding 40 kilometers an hour. So you have to meet both those requirements of entering and exiting and not exceeding 40 to fall under this exemption for seatbelts. And that again is Motor Vehicle Act section 220 subsection 5, seatbelt exemptions for drivers. Now, what about if you have passengers between the ages of 6 and 15? Whose responsibility is it that they wear their seatbelts? It's a driver's responsibility. A driver must ensure that passengers aged 6 to 15 wear a seatbelt properly unless they are exempt. So that's Motor Vehicle Act section 220 subsection 6. The driver responsibility for passenger seatbelt use. So the next set of questions, these are from the Motor Vehicle Act regulations, which are a lot more specific to the types of questions you're almost guaranteed to see in this career of being a driving instructor. For example, when must a driver turn on their vehicle lights? We answered this a little bit a while ago. The regulation section 4.01 states 30 minutes after sunset to 30 minutes before sunrise, or when visibility is reduced, making objects on the highway not clearly visible at 150 meters. And so in the morning time when there's that fog or that dew that's out and we can't see more than 150 meters, or maybe you're driving on the connector highway, which tends to see a lot of fog, or maybe high elevation roadways. If you can't see more than 150 meters, you're required to have your lights on. What is the maximum fine for violating certain driver training regulations under the Motor Vehicle Act regulations? So if all of this driver training regulation stuff falls under Division 27. This one, the answer to this is Division 27, Section 27.03, subsection 1, in penalties. A person or institution that violates specific provisions related to driver training may be fined up to $2,000. And so that, as a school owner, is important to know. Under what circumstances can ICBC suspend, cancel, or refuse to renew a driver training school or instructor license? And so where we find this is in the regulations, Division 27.03, subsection 3 again, in the penalties. ICBC can suspend, cancel, or refuse to issue or renew a license if the licensee engages in fraud or deceptive practice, if we aid or abet fraud related to driver license testing, fail to maintain required records, if we're convicted of a serious criminal code offense, we fail to comply with regulatory requirements, or if we teach or possess ICBC knowledge tests without ICBC's consent. I've also heard of schools getting in trouble for following the examiners when they're on their road test. That's ICBC information on their road test route, which we can't have. And so you could face your instructor license or your school license not being renewed. Now, who's legally allowed to operate as a driver training school in BC? We'd find this under Division 27.04, subsection 1 in licensing. Only the holder of a valid and subsisting driver training license issued under the Motor Vehicle Act regulations can operate as a driver training school in BC. So you have to have and hold a valid instructor training school license to be able to teach in this province. So can someone act as a driver training instructor without a valid license from ICBC? No. A person must hold a valid driver training instructor's license issued by ICBC to act as a driver training instructor in British Columbia. So you can't come from another province with the instructor license there and start teaching here. You can't just start teaching and requiring students to pay you money for your education without an instructor license. And that's in Motor Vehicle Act Regulations, section 27.04, subsection 2. What type of security must every driver training school and instructor training facility provide to ICBC? And so this is something, when you start your own school, you're required to supply them as part of your agreement with ICBC to be a valid driving school. Where we find this is in section 27.05, subsection 1 and 7 of the Motor Vehicle Act regulations. And every driver training school and instructor training facility must furnish and maintain security with ICBC under the Bonding Act. So you can either have a cash or a bond from an authorized financial institution, or a term deposit registered in ICBC's name. That's in case something happens, that you've got money set aside either by yourself or an insurance company to have your back in case something goes bad. And it's a requirement for every school in the province. The amount that it is changes based on how many instructors you have, up to a maximum, which is laid out in the package you get when you register to become a school. How much security must a driver training school maintain for each instructor providing class 5-7 driver education courses? So this is again what I mentioned just now. Well, depending on how many instructors you have and depending on what they teach, you have to have a certain amount of bond put up for them. And so the answer for this is in Regulations Division 27.05, where it states that you must maintain security of $2,000 for each full-time or part-time instructor employed or retained by the school. So $2,000 for every instructor you have. What must a driver training school provide to a student before starting training and collecting payment? So what are the things that we have to get done before our student can actually start to learn? What we have to give them, you'll find in Motor Vehicle Act Regulations, section 27.06, for standards and obligations of driver training schools. We must provide a written statement that includes the name and address of the school, all fees, extra charges, number of people allowed in the vehicle, actual practice driving time per lesson, not just a full, this is a 90-minute lesson, how many minutes will I actually be driving, or will you actually be driving during this 90 minutes? The fee for each lesson, and our school refund policies. So we now have the obligation to provide all this in writing to our students before they start to drive. how long must a driver training school keep records and maintain student and instructor records on hand? They can't expect us to keep it forever, but according to the Motor Vehicle Act regulations, Division 27.06, they must be maintained for 6 years if they are created on or after June 1st, 2021, and for 3 years if they were created before that date. So those who created before that date, it's no longer in effect anyway. So from now on, whenever you train any student, the records that you've created, those have to be with the organization, with the driving school, for a minimum of 6 years before you can get rid of them. True or false? Can ICBC inspect a driver training school's vehicles, records, and training materials? Of course they can. ICBC or its designate can visit, inspect, and monitor the driver training school's premises, vehicle, record, material, and lessons during business hours or other reasonable times. So this is in the regulation, section 27.06, subsection 5. Now, what must a driver training school do if it stops operating? So I've decided to close down my driving school. What do I have to do? You'd find this in Division 27.06, subsection 7. The school must return its driver training school license to ICBC within 10 days of ceasing operations. What if you're not shutting down? What if you're just moving locations? So what must a driver training school do if it changes its registered office address? Same idea. This is in regulations section 27.06, subsection 9. The school must notify ICBC in writing within 10 days of changing its office address. So if you're in an instructor training facility, there's certain things that we have to allow ICBC to do during inspections. What are they? So if we look at the regulations, section 27.06, subsection 1, states that we must allow ICBC or its designate to visit the facility, examine records, materials, and equipment, inspect our vehicles, attend and monitor instructor training courses, copy records, and other relevant materials. So access to almost everything that we're putting on for participants. What are the minimum requirements for an applicant to obtain a Class 5-7 driver training instructor's license in BC? You would have seen this on your application form when you went to become a driver instructor yourself. So what are the requirements to be an applicant to hopefully become an instructor one day? And again, your students might ask you this also if they have a great experience, maybe they want to entertain this as a line of work for themselves. Where you'll find this answer is Motor Vehicle Act regulations, section 27.07, subsection 1, where it says that you have to have your Class 5 driver's license for at least 3 years, be at least 19 years of age, have an acceptable driving record with less than 10 demerit points in the past 2 years, and no serious driving related criminal code convictions. You have to provide a police check that does not indicate convictions related to dishonesty, violence, or indecency within the last 5 years. You have to pass an approved instructor training course, which is what you're signed up to do now. And you have to submit a medical report if you do not hold a valid instructor's license within the last 24 months. So if you're brand new to this role, one of the things you'll have to do is also include a medical record. Now, if you're in an instructor training facility like we are, how long do we have to maintain our student, instructor, and training vehicle records? The amount of time falls the same as it would be if you were a driver training school working with brand new drivers. 6 years is the period of time that we have to hold on to all these records, and where we find this is Motor Vehicle Act Regulations, section 27.07, subsection 1. Now you become a driver training instructor. What are the requirements to maintain your instructor license, so to be able to keep it? And where you'll find this is 27.08, obligations of driver training instructor, where an instructor must continue to have less than 10 demerit points on their driver license, no criminal code convictions related to driving in the past 3 years. We're still required to do regular police checks upon request because we're working with the youth. We may be completing training courses and qualifying on exams or re-exams if required by ICBC. We're required to provide our instructor license to the school that we work for, only provide training to students enrolled in that school, so we can't go and help our friends and family if we're charging them. That's now illegal. They have to go through a school that we work for. We must hold a BC driver's license for the class that we're teaching and use an approved curriculum. Now these driver training vehicles we use, this is our moving billboard. This is where all our branding takes place. But what equipment and markings on these pieces of equipment do we have to have for class 5-7 vehicles? We find this section in Motor Vehicle Act Regulations in Division 27.09, driver training vehicles, where we find the required equipment and markings are dual brake pedals, dual clutch pedals if you have a manual vehicle. You must have a rear view mirror separate from the driver's mirror that gives you a clear view of the highway behind you. And we also have to have student driver written legibly in uppercase, at least 50 millimeters high off the ground, and in contrasting colors of the vehicle. So it must be easy to read from behind, student driver. Everything else that you'll see in driving school vehicles across the province are nice to haves, such as the company name, phone number, website, second steering wheel or accelerator pedal. There's no requirement to have the L or the N sticker on the back. All those are nice to have for delivering driver training. So we're talking about advertising. What are the driver training school and instructors prohibited from doing? What are we not allowed to do when it comes to advertising and business practice? What are the big no-nos? Well, we'll find this in the Motor Vehicle Act Regulations, section 27.10, subsection 2, that a school and its instructors both are not allowed to misrepresent themselves as ICBC representatives. We don't work for ICBC. We cannot solicit inside an ICBC office. As genius as it would be, you can't go into an ICBC testing office and start offering your services. You can't engage in false, misleading, or deceptive advertising, such as road test guaranteed to pass. You cannot guarantee the road test will pass. You cannot endorse, can't claim ICBC endorsement as saying that ICBC says that we're the best school. Can't say that. And we can't include the name of the school. We have to include the name of the school or the instructor in the advertising. Every time we advertise, it has to have the name of our school at minimum or instructor's name. So who sets the policy guidelines for driver training courses and instructor training in British Columbia? The responsible organization is ICBC for setting policy and guidelines for driver training courses, training of driver training instructors, course curriculum, facilities, equipment, ICBC also has the authority to monitor these courses to ensure compliance. And so that's Motor Vehicle Act Regulations, section 27.11. What are the seating requirements for passengers aged 16 or older in a vehicle on a highway? So we're jumping to a different section now. Now this is Motor Vehicle Act Regulations, section 39.01, that passengers 16 years or older, so all these people that we're starting to teach that are minimum 16 years old with their learners, they must remain seated in a designated seating position while the vehicle is in motion. So they can't be jumping around from seats. And they cannot share a designated seating position with another passenger. So two people cannot sit in that front passenger seat together. Each person has to have their own separate seat, and they can't get up and move seats while the vehicle is in motion. Now, who's responsible in a vehicle when driving on a highway to make sure that people... Okay, I'm going to cross that one out. I'm going to restart that one. What are the responsibilities of a driver regarding passenger seating in a vehicle on highway? So this is all about driver responsibilities, which you find in Motor Vehicle Act Regulations, section 39.02, driver responsibilities. A driver must not operate a vehicle if a person is riding on the outside of the vehicle. As fun as it sounds, it's dangerous for someone to be riding on top or on the outside of the vehicle. More than one person is sharing a designated seating position. Passengers not seated in a designated seating position. Additional seating positions have been added beyond what the vehicle manufacturer originally provided, so you can't customize and add more seats. And there are more passengers than available seats in the vehicle. If any of those criteria are met, it's the driver's responsibility to make sure the vehicle does not move. What are the responsibilities of a vehicle owner, employer, or carrier regarding passenger safety in a vehicle operated on a highway? Okay, I'm going to skip that one because we already kind of covered that. Now, some people who have experienced driving back in the early 1900s saw vehicles that did not have seatbelts. But are all vehicles required to have seatbelts for every seating position? The answer is no, it's false. Certain older vehicles are exempt from seatbelt requirements if they're originally manufactured without seatbelts and have not been modified to include them. So this includes motor vehicles from model year 1973 or earlier, buses from model year 1993 or earlier, motorhomes from model year 1998 or earlier, and vehicles not required to have seatbelts under the Motor Vehicle Safety Act when manufactured or imported. So we'll find the answers in Regulations section 39.03, subsection 2 and 3 for exemptions. Now, a question we get asked all the time as driver trainers is about specific lane use. And for this question, it's asking, can any driver use a high occupancy vehicle lane or the HOV lane? Let's take a look at the answer in Motor Vehicle Act Regulations, section 42.02, subsection 2, for the rules of high occupancy vehicles, which says no, only authorized vehicles are allowed in the HOV lane. The only time when you're not following the rules of HOV, so if you don't have more than 2 passengers, you're not driving an electric vehicle, you're not a bus, you're also not on a motorcycle. The only other times that you can drive in those HOV lanes is if you're making a right turn at the first intersection, you're merging into an adjacent lane to turn right, or you've been directed to by a police officer. Now, which vehicles are allowed to use HOV lanes regardless of the number of passengers? So even if they only have one occupant, these vehicles are allowed to drive in the HOV lane. Emergency vehicles, marked vehicles responding to a disabled vehicle or emergency, taxi, motorcycle, handy dart, electric vehicles, and blood delivery vehicles transporting blood or blood products. Now, where we find that is the Motor Vehicle Act Regulations, section 42.02, subsection 3. What qualifies a vehicle as an official vehicle under the Motor Vehicle Act Regulations? An official vehicle must meet both of the following conditions. It's authorized under the regulations, Motor Vehicle Act Regulations 4.28 to display flashing red, blue, white, or amber lights. And it is actively displaying those lights while stopped on or beside the highway. Its components are in use or a crew member is working on or near the highway. So for emergency services, tow trucks, construction vehicles have their lights flashing and they're authorized to do so, then they're considered official vehicles. And that we'll find in Motor Vehicle Act Regulations, section 47.01. So let's say we're driving down the road, or our students driving down the road, and they are approaching or passing a stopped official vehicle on a highway. What must they do? So if you're approaching an official vehicle that is stopped on the highway, you must slow down to a maximum of 70 kilometers an hour if the speed limit is 80 kilometers an hour or more, 40 kilometers an hour if the posted speed limit is less than 80 kilometers an hour, and if the speed limit is already below 40 kilometers an hour, the driver must follow the posted limit. Man, these are maximums. You can always go slower. We want to keep people safe that are working on the sides of the road. If you're the driver in a lane next to the official vehicle, you also have to move to another lane if it's safe to do so, unless directed otherwise by a peace officer. Now, this rule does not apply if the official vehicle is on the opposite side of a divided highway or laned roadway. So if there's a barrier in between us and they're on the other side of the road, these rules do not apply to us. Where do I find this? I find this in the Motor Vehicle Act Regulations, Division 47.02. So now we're moving forward to tuning up for driver questions. So I would pull out your tuning up for drivers manual. Again, if you haven't read it, pause the video, take some time to read through it and understand it before you try the quiz questions. Try the quiz questions and then watch the rest of this video to see if you're on the right track and if you're really understanding what it's asking. So first question, you should recline your seat enough to allow your arms to reach straight out to the steering wheel. I find this answer in Tuning Up for Drivers on page 11. The answer is false. Sitting in your normal driving position, you should always be able to see either side of the car through the mirrors without tilting or rocking your head to the side. Also on page 11, this answer is false. When we're sitting in our position, at first we can teach our students to see a little bit of our car and as much out to the side, but it's not illegal to have them turn a little bit further away so that you can only see your vehicle if you tilt over. When adjusting your seat, if your vehicle has airbags, you should make sure this much space is between your chest and the airbag if possible. Now, this is on page 10 of Tuning Up for Drivers. The answer is at least 25 centimeters of space, and that's to keep ourselves safe in case the airbag ever goes off. How far should you look when driving? Best practice and Tuning Up for Drivers on page 15 says at least 12 seconds ahead. This gives us lots of time to see what's ahead, plan our next moves, take action, and adjust accordingly before we get too close to the incident or whatever it is. The areas around the car that cannot be seen from our driver's seat and our mirrors are called our blind spots. True or false? This is true, and we find this on Tuning Up for Drivers, page 15. Now, a 360-degree check includes looking in at least one mirror. So, looking all the way around, true or false, this requires looking in at least one mirror. It's false, it requires you to look in every single mirror that you have available to you. And you find this on page 16 of Tuning Up for Drivers. Here's a question. What is a dead pedal? It's the position on the left part of the driver's side floor where a driver's left foot goes. So we find this on page 17 of Tuning Up for Drivers. This helps stabilize the driver in their seat, helps to adjust our seating, and this is where the clutch used to be on manual driving transmissions. True or false? You could be injured by the airbag. And the answer is true. True or false? Using your right foot for the accelerator and your left foot for the brake is an effective way to reduce reaction time when driving. We see a lot of students who've grown up knowing this, or from video games, or whatever it is, have learned that this is the best way to do it. Answer is false. You find this on page 18 and 19 of Tuning Up for Drivers. By putting your hands on the spokes of the steering wheel, you'll be able to better maintain the straight path when steering. So instead of having your hands on the outside of the wheel, this is saying holding the inside spokes. Answer to this is false. Page 17 of Tuning Up for Drivers. It's also dangerous in case the airbag ever goes off. In a car with a manual transmission, always keep your left foot on the clutch pedal and ready to slip the clutch when needed in a corner or emergency. The answer is false. We find this on Tuning Up for Drivers, page 17. When starting out, the vehicle doesn't need much power from the engine, so gentle pressure on the accelerator might be enough. True or false? Pedal sensitivity is an important thing to teach brand new drivers because this is true. It doesn't take much to get the vehicle moving. You find this on page 18 of Tuning Up for Drivers. Do, think, see is a good method to use when teaching a new driver. True or false? You can find this on page 25 of Tuning Up for Drivers. This is false. It's actually see, think, do. So tricky that we turned it around. Surprises is a main category of hazard. True or false? This is false. Surprise is not a main category of hazards. If we're driving defensively, there should be no surprises in the first place. And again, page 25. Now, why is it better to leave a larger following distance when following a motorcycle? Well, motorcycles stop in a shorter distance than a car because they weigh a lot less, so you need more space to stop. And we find this on page 29 of Tuning Up for Drivers. What does space margin mean? Also on page 29, we learn that space margin means space around your vehicle in all directions. It's our bubble. When steering in a turn, where should you look? New drivers tend to look just over the hood of our vehicle. It's on us to teach them to look where you intend the car to end up when the turn is complete. And we find this on page 31 of Tuning Up for Drivers. If you are starting to turn right from a stop, the last thing you should do before moving is, because some time has changed, the best thing to do before leaving is shoulder check right side to make sure there are no pedestrians. We find this on page 31 of Tuning Up for Drivers. When preparing to stop, what should we do? Well, page 35 of Tuning Up for Drivers says lightly apply or tap the brake to alert the driver behind that you will be stopping. What portion of all collisions involve one car hitting another from behind? And this is one of the leading causes of collisions, being rear-ended. It's almost 25% of all collisions that happen on the road are rear-end. And you can find that on page 35 of Tuning Up for Drivers. In every year in British Columbia, how many people are killed in alcohol-related collisions? If we take a look at Tuning Up for Drivers, page 43, we learned that 100 people every single year are killed due to alcohol-related collisions. Now, if you're part of the GLP program, if your student is part of the GLP program, are they allowed to use a hands-free cell phone to call 911 to report an emergency? Yes, they can. On page 44 of Tuning Up for Drivers is where you can find it, but this is true. Now, parking uphill. So we're parking on an uphill and pretending we're leaving the vehicle overnight. What should you do? And so the answer is two things. Turn your wheels right if there's no curb, and turn your wheels left if there is a curb. So both A and C, if you're following along on the quiz sheet. And the whole purpose of this is so that our vehicle does not roll into the middle of the roadway if for any reason it's not secured. In a two-point turn, a driveway is used to turn around. True or false? In Tuning Up for Drivers, page 56, we learned that this is true. Now earlier, Preet was talking about still green lights, but what is a still green light? So still green light is one that is about to change to yellow, or that we did not see change to green in the first place. If you are the first car at an intersection, when the light goes green, you should page 72 of Tuning Up for Drivers, scan left, center, right, then left one more time, releasing the brake, then we go. And the reason we do that second check to the left is that's where the immediate danger comes from when passing through an intersection. True or false? Vehicle position is a means of communication. Page 75 of Tuning Up for Drivers, answer is true. We use it almost like body language. When turning left on a green light, page 83 of Tuning Up for Drivers, pull across a crosswalk into the intersection to wait for a gap. And so, if we're waiting to make a left turn, we don't wait behind the stop line. Reason being is if the light changes to yellow, we're at a point that it's safe for us to stop, so we're no longer allowed to enter the intersection. And if we continue to wait here for all the other cars and it's a busy street, we'll never end up going. So when the light turns green, we position ourselves in the intersection, which we talked about as this inside square. Our front wheels just past that point. Now we've legally entered the intersection on a green. When the light changes to yellow or amber, we're legally allowed to clear when it's safe to do so and complete our turn. So if you're waiting at the stop line for a gap to turn left on green and the light turns yellow, what should you do? We stay stopped and we wait until the light turns green again. And we actually find that in Motor Vehicle Act section 128, subsection 1. Now if you're waiting to turn left and the light goes yellow, then red before you can turn. So if we've entered the intersection, light is green, light turns yellow, and then red, what do? We wait until it's safe, and then we clear the intersection. We don't just stay where we are. Now let's talk about stopping distance. So doubling the speed of a vehicle does what to our stopping or our braking distance? On page 91 of Tuning Up for Drivers, we learned that in doubling the speed of our vehicle, so if we're going 50 and we go to stop, and then we go 100 and we try to stop, at 100, it would take 4 times as much space to come to a stop as it would at 50. So if you double your speed, you increase the braking distance by 4. So when you're driving, a billboard is, you can find this on page 97 of Tuning Up for Drivers. A billboard is a large vehicle that may block your vision. So it could be a bus, a truck, anything that blocks our vision. True or false? When leaving the freeway, you should slow down to a safe exit speed before entering the exit. Answer is false. We find this on page 99 of Tuning Up for Drivers. We slow down to safe exit speed once we've joined the exit ramp, not in the middle of the freeway where everyone else is trying to continue at their speed. When entering a freeway and you can't find a gap, the safest thing is to stop and wait for a big gap. True or false? Find the answer on page 98 of Tuning Up for Drivers. The answer is false. This creates confusion. It also creates a lot of nasty emotions in drivers. If you stop on the merging lane, it's best to match the speed of traffic, place yourselves between a gap that's safe and acceptable, and then merge when it's safe to do so.
So, that was a lot. A lot of questions, a lot of information, and your mind might be overloaded or just feel as though it's exploding right now. Don't panic. If you're watching this at least a few weeks before your ITC, you've got lots of time to be ready and to feel prepared and to know your stuff. And I suggest you take that time and actually do the preparation. You will thank yourself for doing that, I promise you. The more prepared you are by knowing this information, the easier time you're going to have on your ITC. On your ITC, many nights there will be homework assigned that you'll need to do for the following day. So don't leave this to try and do in the evenings, because you're already going to have work to do in the evenings. An instructor training course is intense. It is very focused, and it is demanding. Once you've successfully completed the course, you'll feel proud of yourself, and you'll be prepared to train new drivers to drive safely for a lifetime. You'll save lives doing that, but you need to prepare. So my last advice to you is, please do this work. If you have not read those books, we've told you I think a couple times now, read Learn to Drive Smart, Tuning Up for Drivers. Read the Motor Vehicle Act and the regulations that have been recommended in your materials, and be prepared for this course. Please take your time and go through this video again, as long as it may be, question by question, to test yourself and make sure that you know everything you need to know to be successful. Good luck. Look forward to seeing you at the start of your course.